On episode 5 of the Business of Universal Kindness podcast, I have the pleasure of interviewing Valentina Milanova. Her company Daye produces cramp-reducing tampons that are kind to female anatomy and are also kind and sustainable for the planet too. Valentina is a great example of pushing for your dreams and never giving up, even when you're getting negative feedback from every angle. She shares her journey from idea to bringing her product to market, which includes cold pitching hundreds of investors on LinkedIn to eventually raise $5.5 million in her first round. Listen in as we get to hear the ups and downs of creating an e-commerce business you're so passionate about that you'll work every waking hour to bring it to life. So let's go. One of the smallest decisions we make as business owners and consumers could have a lasting impact in the world. This is what we question here at the Business of Universal Kindness podcast. If you're curious about living more naturally by choosing products that are kind to humans, the planet, and the creatures that we share it with, then keep listening. And if you're operating a business that creates these types of products, then pull up a chair because we're about to find out what it takes to build a company that makes money and does some good in the world too. I'm your host, Sarah Henson, email strategist to mission-driven e-commerce companies. Join me on this journey as we explore what it means to take radical responsibility for our choices while also making an impact that can change the world. Because universal kindness is everybody's business. Hi there, Valentina. Welcome to the Business of Universal Kindness podcast. How are you today?
Hi, Sarah. I'm good given the circumstances. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So I usually start with the founder's story. I know that your story begins way back when you were 9 years old. But before we get into that, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was your kind of vision for your life?
I really wanted to be an opera singer or an environmentalist.
Wow.
My mother took me to the Museum of Natural History in Bulgaria once, and they had an environmentalist give a talk. And I remember that word and thought it was really cool to just, interact with animals and plants and look at different ways of protecting them. And I also really loved singing. So my career choices were either opera singer or environmentalist.
So you've always had an interest then in the environment and that. Why do you feel like you didn't go into the opera singing round, or did you? Maybe you did go that way
No.
at some point.
I did not. I don't have the talent or the vocal capacity, unfortunately, to be an opera singer. But my mother, again, was a big fan of the opera, so she would always play opera CDs when she was cleaning at the house. And I loved how powerful the opera singer sounded, and I wanted to emulate that.
All right. Do you still listen to opera yourself now?
Yeah, I do. I particularly now, when I'm the only person in the office, and we have a really good Sonos sound system, I can just crank up my opera music and move on with my day.
Oh, wow. So that this is probably how you get inspired each day, is to crank up your opera. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about Daye and how your story of like from when you were 9 years old and how that all kind of evolved and developed for you then?
Yeah, so Daye is a female health research and development company, and the first industry which we're disrupting is period care. How I got personally inspired to change the way that women look after their menstruation was with my own experience with having my first period, and not knowing what was going on with my body. When I had my first menstruation, my parents were going through a rather bad divorce, so I wasn't in a lot of contact with my mother, and I had to kind of explain to my father what was going on, and my father is quite old. He had me when he was 45, I think. So there was a generational gap, there was a gender gap, and I just felt really, really uncomfortable going to him for answers. So instead, what I did is just turn to books and turn to research papers. My parents always had a really large library in the house, which meant that I could access all kinds of books on the human biology and our anatomy, and just kind of look for answers by myself. And I think this built the muscle in me to just search for answers by myself, which has been a really helpful skill that I've had throughout my life and throughout my career. And then when I think I took it one step too far with reading about the female body and about different diseases that can impact the female body, because I convinced myself that I had breast cancer.
Wow.
I was reading about self breast exams to check for cancer lumps, and that was approximately a year into having my first period, which is when my breasts had started making an appearance, and they definitely felt like lumps at that time. So when I was giving myself a self breast exam, I just became convinced that I also had breast cancer, and that's what forced me to come out to my father and say, "Listen, I've been bleeding and I also have breast cancer, and we have to go to the hospital." So we did go to the hospital to ask about my first period. And I remember the nurse that was in the hospital just thought it was all really funny, and she said, "But it's just your period, it's just menstruation." I was like, "But what does that mean?"
I mean, even though, I'm sure in hindsight now, looking back for you, it's quite humorous. But at that time, because I mean, I remember going through similar things when I was younger, like not understanding how my body was developing. And my parents have always been very open about, you know, the body and everything. But it's still, when it's happening to you, it's such an unknown, especially when you're a child and trying to wrap your head around it. It's very, very difficult. So I can imagine that that was quite a tough time for you.
Yeah, and it felt very unfair that you know you're always really young when you have your first menstruation, whether you have it at 16, 17, or 9, 10, 12, 11. And when you have your first period, you all of a sudden have to start making these really big, impactful, important decisions about your health and your future, and around like what period care you should be using, whether you should be on contraception, and if you are on contraception, what kind of contraception should you be using. And you start having all of these changes to your vaginal microbiome, which could result in changes of your discharge, which you then have to learn how to manage. So we're forced as women and girls to kind of grow up very quickly and start making these really important decisions about our future health and our reproductive health. And I felt that women were not in any meaningful way supported properly throughout that process, and they weren't given access to the right information. So a very big part of our mission at Daye is to create content on the topic of female health, which is science based and thoroughly researched, but written in a language that's very digestible and very easy for anyone to understand, even if they don't have a medical degree. Before we had our first product, the tampon, we had a blog called Vitals, which is edited by our content editor, Liv. And Vitals was our way to establish a relationship with our community, establish a relationship with our future consumers by creating this library of really utilitarian, really meaningful content on female health, on all kinds of topics in female health, not just menstruation.
So you kind of go beyond the typical e-commerce business. You're actually an education platform as well.
And that was always part of the mission of Daye, yes. And in the summer, we're launching a female health educational booklet, which has answers on all of the questions that you ask yourself before and after you have your first period and when you're going through your teenage years as a girl. So it has answers on what are the different ways in which you can remove some of the body hair that you don't want on your body, what are the different options for period care that you should consider, how to approach masturbation, how to look at your vulva for the first time. And I'm really excited to just have this content that we initially created through Vitals take a new form of almost being like the cool big sister that not all of us had, but all of us wish we had, in the form of an illustrated book, which we plan to just provide for free in schools in the UK.
Wow, that's a really great idea to get that kind of information out there, especially in terminology that's understandable as well, because there is a lot of information, but it's in medical form, and sometimes as a kid, you're not going to be able to understand it or assimilate that into what it means for you. So, let's go back to kind of like the inception of Daye, of like how you got it up and running. So, what's your background before Daye? You kind of started Daye. Like, what kind of work did you do before you launched?
Out of university, I joined an economic research think tank. After that, I was attracted into the tech and entrepreneurship space. So for a while, I worked at Techstars London and Founders Factory. Those are two accelerators for early stage startup ventures. And while I was at those two accelerators, I had the idea for Daye, and was kind of building Daye on the side, using my salary as a subsidy for the initial product development, the initial clinical validation, initial IP.
So you were already submerged in that kind of industry, and you were connected with people who helped startups in their initial phases. So you were already connected in that manner.
Yeah, I had a lot of really great mentors that helped me establish the foundations of Daye, not only as an idea, but also as something that could become sustainable long-term business.
Do you feel that that gave you an advantage for getting Daye out of the gate?
Undoubtedly, for sure. The network that I had of other founders from whose experience I could learn, but also people who had built companies in the past and were now in different lines of work, that really helped me think critically about all of the gaps in my business plan, about all of the gaps in my research, so that I could translate what was a great idea on paper into a product that actually makes a meaningful difference into the lives of people. And that's also, even though I got a lot of advice, I definitely underestimated how long and how hard the journey of, let's turn this idea into a product would be.
How long was that timeline from the original idea to then launching the Vitals, the blog? So how long did that take from initial idea?
Yeah, so I had the idea for our first product, for the more absorbent cramp fighting tampon, in May 2017, just again from reading research papers about industrial hemp, which is a plant that has more absorbent fibers than cotton. And the flower of that plant produces an extract, which in research papers has been shown to be analgesic and anti inflammatory. So that's when I had the idea for our first product. And I set about trying to tell as many people as possible about this idea to try and vet it. And I got a lot of really negative feedback kind of from all corners. People felt really uncomfortable to talk to me about tampons and menstruation. So from May 2017 to November 2017, I kind of parked the idea on the shelf because I kept getting all of this negative feedback. People used to say, if this was a good idea, Procter and Gamble would have invented it already. Or if women wanted pain relieving tampons, Tampax would have had a line of pain relieving tampons. This concept for improving the experience that people have when menstruating always really stuck with me in the back of my mind. So I had dreams about the idea. I had these incessant thoughts about the idea. So in November 2017, I just decided that I was going to start quietly testing the business, testing the product, seeing whether this is something that can actually work. So I reached out to an old university friend who studied mechanical engineering, and he helped me create the first desktop-sized tampon machine that we had, which was, super manual and just took forever to make one tampon. But I was able to create the first prototypes, and then I invited all of my girlfriends for a dinner party at my house. And I said, can you please try my tampons? I created them by hand, but in sanitary conditions. And please, please, please let me know what you think. So I convinced some of my girlfriends to give them a try. And I also was using the tampons, and I realized, yes, they are more absorbent, but also they are really effective at reducing period pain. And after I had this realization, I set about trying to manufacture the product at a bigger scale. So I had this whole period between November 2017 to May 2018 of just trying to manufacture the product, trying to manufacture the tampon, but also trying to manufacture our coating and how it was going to be applied onto the surface of the tampon, thinking about how to make the packaging sustainable, how to build a beautiful brand, etc. And from that period, November 2017 to May 2018, I got the clinical validation that I needed to show that the product was safe and effective. I got the IP protection, which I needed to ensure that one of the big monopoly giants that are active in our space wouldn't just kind of latch onto the idea and commercialize it before myself. And I got exclusivity agreements with our key suppliers, which made it even more difficult for anyone that was trying to replicate the idea to do so. And in the summer of 2018, so from June to September, I set about fundraising. And how I did that was just by reaching out to investors on LinkedIn. People say don't cold message investors, but that's how I got introduced to our lead investors. And I just pitched anyone that would listen. Again, I got tons of negative feedback, and no one could understand what the product was or what the company was. And people kept asking me whether this was some kind of an NGO, and why do I keep talking about the environment when this is a tampon brand? It doesn't make sense. But I perfected my pitch through practice. I spoke to over 180 investors that summer and was able to raise the first round of investments for the company. And that round of investments is what I used to start building out a team. So in September 2018, I quit my job, Founders Factory, and I started Daye full time.
Wow, that's incredible. So you were pretty relentless in your idea then, because in terms of like the journey from when you started manufacturing it by hand yourself and getting a friend's help to create a machine to make this, how much energy and personal time and money of your own did it take to get that sorted in that first period of November 17th to May 18?
Yeah, I had an obnoxious amount of credit card debt, which I also seriously mismanaged to the point where now I have a really appalling credit rating. And whenever I have to change flats, it's very difficult for me. I always have to get a guarantor because my credit rating is just exceptionally bad. And at the same time, I had a really challenging day job. My work at Founders Factory involved a lot of long hours. It was very intellectually stimulating, and it was a lot of hard work being an investment associate. But I just used the really early mornings and really late evenings and weekends to build Daye. So I would wake up every morning at 4. I would just go to the office because the office offers free breakfast, and I was at that time I was the stingiest person you could meet at that time. And I would just work on my company until 8:39 when I started my day job, and then my day job would continue until kind of 6:37, and then I would just stay in the office and continue working on Daye. And during the weekends, I would go into Planet Organic in Notting Hill because they have these tables where you can sit and just have a drink or have something to eat, and they're very neatly positioned right next to the tampon aisle. So I could just sit there and observe the way that people were interacting with tampon brands, the way that they just their entire purchasing experience. And I could also just go to real consumers and ask, what are some of the things that you find really frustrating with the current state of menstrual care? Yeah, it was a lot of hard work, but it didn't feel like hard work at the time because I was really inspired by what I was doing. And at that time I thought, okay, these are really long hours. I bet this is the longest hours that I will work in my life. And then I fundraised and I built a team, and I realized, oh wow, I had no idea what I was talking about then. It's so much worse.
Well, it's fascinating to hear, what it takes to really kind of get your idea and dream out into the world. And the fact that you spent the time in the trenches as such, speaking to consumers about their frustrations with and their, the user experience with tampons and things like that. So I bet you must have got so much useful information by speaking to your potential customers.
Yeah, but also the principle of having our consumers as co-creators of the Daye products and the Daye brand, Daye everything, has really now translated into the entire company operation. So whenever we create a new Instagram ad or a new packaging design, whenever we use a new wrapper material, whenever we design a new applicator, we always ask our consumers what they think about it before we launch it to the market, and we ask them very early. So this experience that I had of going to consumers really early on stuck with me and resonated with me really hard. And now it's a central thesis to everything that we do at Daye. We invite consumers to be genuine co-creators of Daye as a company.
So do you have like a database of people that you contact for this purpose then?
Yeah, we call them our Daye breakers.
Mm-hmm.
And they are the people who just give us feedback on everything. They're the co-creators of the brand.
Wow. So do you accept any new people into your Daybreakers community?
We do, yes.
Oh, great. Well, we'll link some information in the show notes on that.
For everyone who becomes a Daybreaker, they get to personally benefit from giving us feedback. So we don't expect that they do that for free.
So in terms of getting investors on board, what was your first round of investment like? How much did you manage to raise?
Yeah, so in total for our seed round, we raised $5.5 million from investors in London and San Francisco. And, it sounds like a lot, and it sounds like it just happened over the course of months. And in no way do I want to downplay how difficult this was. It wasn't just, I snapped my fingers and this happened. And there were a number of serious challenges and complications throughout that fundraising process. But another thing that I wanted to highlight that I wish I had heard when I was first becoming an entrepreneur, the the traits that you have as a founder, the traits that you have as a single person company, as someone who takes an idea and translates it into a business, are sometimes the opposite of the traits that you need in order to manage your board successfully, in order to scale your business. So you mentioned something before where you said I had a lot of resilience in pushing the idea forward, even though I kept hearing no. And that's the contrarian in me. I'm a really strong contrarian. And when you are a contrarian, all of a sudden you have to run a company with 25 people and a 4-person board. You have to upskill. You have to change who you, and that was a personal challenge that I faced for sure.
You have to adapt how you approach everything. So let's talk about the actual tampons and go into what's so special about them, because they are very, very different from anything you can get on the market at the moment, aren't they?
So we have two tampons, the naked tampon and the Cbd tampon. The naked tampon is just an overall better tampon, and how we measure that is it's the most absorbent organic tampon on the market, so less leaks. It has a protective sleeve which prevents fiber loss. Fiber loss is associated with vaginal infection. It's sterilized to prevent toxic shock syndrome. It also comes in fully sustainable packaging. So our applicators are made of sugarcane, our wrappers are home compostable or water soluble, and our outer packaging is recycled and painted with bioinks. And then we have the Cbd tampon, which is clinically validated for safety and effectiveness over the course of preclinical and human clinical studies. It's approved by regulators in Europe, and we've submitted all of our documentation to the FDA. We're seeking an approval from them as well. And it's designed to reduce the discomfort that women experience while menstruating. It's designed to reduce our reliance on ibuprofen and other traditional painkillers, which are associated with significant side effects. It's produced in London, in South London, in Bermondsey. That's where we have our production setup, using machines that we designed in-house, that our design engineering team designed in-house. And we've made a commitment for all of our production operators to be recruited through a charity called Working Chance, which gives women who used to be in the criminal and care system a chance to gain fair employment, and to just reintegrate back into society. And as a whole operation, we are CO2 neutral. So being as sustainable as we possibly can is really at the heart of the company. And what we aim to do is to just enable consumers to make the choices that they want to make without having to read all of the research papers that we've read and conduct all of the material science innovation that we've conducted. So we believe that every consumer wants to make an ethical, sustainable, effective product choice. And we think it's up to the brands and up to the product designers to enable consumers to be able to make those decisions.
So you pretty much thought of everything in terms of the whole experience and the using the product as well. When you think of sustainability, eco-friendly, kindness to human. I mean, the fact that you're hiring people from Working Chance, things like that. I mean, was that always your goal to check all those boxes?
I wouldn't say that was a specific goal. I like to be as exhaustive as I possibly can be when I do anything. And if I see room for improvement in any area of my life, in any area of the company, I like to act on it. So it wasn't we didn't set out to create the most environmentally friendly, sustainable, ethical, etc. company. It just came from having this motivation within the business to not cut corners and to be really diligent in everything that we do. And we definitely have not thought of it. We definitely haven't thought of everything. There's plenty more room for optimization. We have plenty of blind spots. We will be learning plenty of lessons as we go along. Pricing, for example, is something that we're yet to figure out. We are more expensive than other traditional tampon brands, and we do get a lot of criticism for that on our social media and in general from consumers. And we do want to make our products as accessible as possible without compromising on their quality, without compromising on the wages that we pay our production operators. So that's, for example, that's an example of something that we're yet to figure out.
So, and I noticed on your website you're very transparent in terms of the costs behind. What inspired that?
So we think consumers are intelligent enough that when information is provided to them as to why a product costs more than a competitor, they will see that as a justification rather than as an excuse. And we thought it was important to just, as always, in everything that we do with the company, include the consumer and invite them as far behind the scenes as possible. And we, in practical terms, the way that we communicate every element of our supply chain was very much inspired by Everlane and the transparency standards that they've set in their supply chain. So our margin is freely accessible for everyone to see on our website. Whenever we have a pricing change, we send an email to our consumers explaining what optimization in our supply chain we've been able to achieve, how we achieved it, and why this has given us the opportunity to change our pricing.
For you then, I mean, obviously we're navigating a very unusual time at the moment. How has the pandemic affected you in your business at the moment?
The way that coronavirus has impacted us is that a number of our team members have contracted the virus. We've had a few team members lose parents to the virus. And obviously, as a production business, it's very hard to work from home. Yeah, I'm still processing the time that we're living in and the long-term implications that it's going to have on Daye and on the economy.
You're navigating as best you can, I suppose. I know it's difficult to ignore the fact that the pandemic is happening, but like back before it all happened, what would a typical day for you look like in terms of what time will you get up and the things that you do during the day at Daye?
I have windows on my ceiling in my bedroom, so I wake up when the sun is out. And I've actually really enjoyed the fact that the sun comes out earlier now because I never feel tired when I wake up from the sun. I feel horrible when I have to wake up from an alarm. I hate the sound of an alarm. So I wake up and I journal a lot. I found that this has really helped me navigate what I'm going through. I'm a single founder. I have an executive team, but there's a lot of things that I have to keep to myself and a lot of things that I have to process by myself. So journaling really helps me with that. And I wish I had a better, more exciting morning routine, but for me, it's journaling. And I have my coffee machine an arm's length away from my bed, and I put capsule in the coffee machine before I go to bed, so that when I wake up in the morning, all that I have to do is press a button to have a coffee. I have a serious caffeine problem. So I journal when I have my coffee, and then I just run out of the door and I go into the office. And my day starts by checking in on our production and making sure that our production operators are doing well and they have everything that they need. I then have a number of different meetings and calls. What the main areas a day for which I'm responsible for are obviously managing the team and making sure that everyone is happy, attracting new talent to the team, managing our investors, reporting to our investors and managing their expectations, finding new investors for Daye. And my favorite part of my job is new product development and innovation. And my favorite part of the job is when I get to work with our design engineering team and when we get to test new materials and new product designs that optimize the experience for our subscribers. I'm also responsible for the build of the brand from a creative perspective. So I liaise a lot with our designer, Erin, who does. We have one designer who does everything for us. By the way, she's tremendous, just incredibly talented and incredibly versatile. So whether it's the design of our landing pages or our packaging or our information cards or the mural in the office, our Instagram ads, her and I collaborate on all of this together, and it's another really favorite part of my job. Um, and I usually go home. I don't. I was at the start of this year. I promised myself that I was going to have more of a personal life. Then coronavirus happened, so I usually go home at about kind of 9:30. I watch Netflix like everyone, and I fall asleep. And I always fall asleep to an audiobook. I find that helps me fall asleep much faster than I otherwise toss and turn in bed way too much.
Yeah. So it sounds like your days are still pretty full on in terms of focused on the business and everything.
Yeah, we're still a very early stage company. We're still a very young and small team. We're still yet to face even bigger challenges than the challenges we've been facing so far.
Looking at the logistics of your business, then you don't actually. And I know a lot of e-commerce businesses use Shopify as their platform. You don't actually use Shopify. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, no, we don't. We made the decision to bring our order management system in house, and that was because our daybreakers, our product testers, told us that the combinations between our different four kinds of tampons, they weren't versatile enough. So they wanted full customization. They wanted to be able to choose every single tampon in their box. And in order to facilitate that, we had to move away from Shopify. We had to build our own order management system. So we got this feedback in September, and by the end of November, we had our own order management system.
Oh, wow. So when it comes to purchasing Daye tampons, it's not a case of like choose a box of 12 and then it gets shipped to you. You actually can choose a combination of the two types of tampons that you have.
Yeah, we have four types of tampons. So we have the CBD regular, CBD super, naked regular, naked super.
Ah, right. So for people with the who experience a few days of pain, they can choose the CBD ones just for that period of time, and then go to the naked ones for the rest of the time.
Exactly. And we also wanted to be able to accommodate for different cycle lengths. So there's this myth that the average cycle is 28 days, but that's not the case at all. We have a great variety of cycle lengths. And in order to be able to accommodate for that, we had to move away from the Shopify billing cycles. So we created our own billing cycles. So now everyday consumer can sync their tampon delivery with their cycle length. So if you're someone that gets their period once every 50 days, every 20 days, every 90 days, we're able to accommodate for your cycle length.
Wow, so that really is taking customer user experience to another level entirely. What email provider do you use to keep in touch with your customers and your potential customers?
You're on SendGrid.
You're on SendGrid, yeah. So, what has been the most effective kind of marketing strategy for you? I mean, you've mentioned you use a lot on Instagram. Has that been really instrumental in getting your product into the feed of consumers?
Yeah, so until recently, we were only spending something like £700 per month on Instagram ads. So when I refer to Instagram, I mean like just our Instagram aesthetic and our Instagram content and the infographics that we create on female health, the videos we create on female health. So the majority of the growth that we've seen so far has come from three main channels. Um, Instagram, people discovering our grid, SEO, people discovering our content while just Googling for various female hot terms, and referrals. So, for example, 18% of our sales so far in April came from existing Daye users referring a friend.
And so, and in terms of the SEO, I'm assuming because of your the vitals that you create on your blog, they're your main source of traffic in terms of SEO. Is that would that be correct?
Exactly, yes. So the content that we create on Vitals is optimized for SEO, so that when you look for a term like vaginal discharge or period poo or what color should my period blood be on Google, you discover the content that we've created on that topic on Vitals, and through Vitals you discover Daye.
Wow, that's a really forward thinking in terms of having your content out there, because your blog is quite comprehensive in terms of what you've created. Who are you behind like the brainstorming of the content, or do you have people in your team who are specifically geared for that?
So we have an exceptionally talented writer, Olivia Casano, Liv, who creates the majority of our Vitals articles. And we've recently started working with freelance journalists. So during the Corona outbreak, we realized a lot of journalists had started losing their income and losing their income security. So we put out a note on Twitter saying we're open to pitches on the topic of female health if you're a journalist who is feeling insecure about their income in the light of Corona, reach out to us. And we had such a tremendous response that we decided to make this a permanent thing. So on Vitals now, we have 4 freelancers every month, people who typically write for Vogue, Refinery 29, Guardian, The Economist, etc., create content for our Daye audience on the topics of female health.
So what's next for you then for Daye? I mean, obviously we've got to get through this pandemic period, but in terms of, you sound like you're a big vision person and you have a lot of ideas. What's the next step for you in terms of growing Daye?
Yeah, actually, one of the things that I've really learned throughout this pandemic is that you have to take a step back and tame your own vision and tame your own ambitions and just really try and survive and keep a lean profile. So for the next 12 months, we're definitely only going to focus on our tampon product and just optimize the value that we're creating for our current subscribers. And once we're out of this difficult period, I hope that we're going to be able to return to this big, really ambitious vision that I have and that the company has for us becoming a full stack female health platform that spans across at home vaginal health screening, personalizing contraception options, and just continuing to provide utilitarian content on female health and research and development and product innovation.
Wow, so it's a case of watch this space with you then. It's a subject matter that is needed, more information out there. So it sounds like you're responding to that. And let's hope that you can grow that over the next few months then. So tell me if there is anyone out there listening to this thinking, they have a big idea, because you had an idea that sat with you for a long time and it wouldn't leave you. What advice would you give to someone who is in that situation, who has got this idea that it just won't go away, but they're either getting negative feedback or a little bit afraid to kind of make that leap? What advice would you give them?
Just pursue it. What's the worst that can happen? That's what I was telling myself when I was getting into more and more credit card debt. I just told myself, okay, what's the worst that can happen? I'm just going to have to repay this debt back, and I'm going to stick with my regular job, and like at least I will have tried to do something that matters to me, to do something that's meaningful. And I think that attitude of what's the worst that can happen is a really strong starter.
And so, what's the feedback that you now get? Because you said that you had a lot of negative feedback. Why no other big companies doing this? What now that you're in the position that you're in? Has the perspective changed on that for you?
The perspective from our consumers, yes, the perspective from people who use the product has been incredibly reassuring, and we keep getting messages every single day from our subscribers saying, "Can I invest in Daye? Can I work for you? How do I tell more of my friends about you? Thank you so much. You've completely changed the way that I think about my periods, the way that I perform when I'm on my period, my relationship to work when I'm on my period." So the thing that really keeps me going through the immense challenge that is building a business is every single day getting this recognition from our consumers. But at the start of this year, we were going to raise another round for Daye, another round of investment, and I was thinking to myself, okay, now we have somewhat of a reputation in the market. We have in such a short amount of time built manufacturing and built a brand and launched the product, and it's not 2017, it's not 2018 anymore. People have changed, attitudes towards female health businesses have changed, and I was really negatively surprised to realize that the investor mentality is very similar to what it was when I was first fundraising when it comes to female health businesses. So I was really surprised to hear a lot of I don't have any female partners on my team, so I don't know how to assess your business. Or I asked my girlfriend about it and she wasn't sure. Or I bought a box for my PA and she didn't have time to try them, so I don't think we should continue conversations. To hear the feedback from our consumers, but I think we still have a long road ahead of us when it comes to having more female partners, having more women in the investment space, but also having male investors just get over themselves a little bit and accept that feeling of discomfort that you have inevitably when you're learning something new and when you're discovering an experience that you haven't been familiar with before. Emily Wise from Glossier, she had a lot of the same feedback when she was first fundraising for Glossier, with people saying, male investors saying, I cannot try your product, so I don't know how and why I should invest in your company. And she had a really interesting contrarian argument to that, which was, if I had come with a really complicated machine learning algorithm to you, which had had a clear application and had clear consumer love, you wouldn't just show me the door because it was a machine learning algorithm that you didn't understand, and you didn't study maths, so you couldn't understand the logic of it. You would try and learn about it. And I really hope that things will get better, and over the next few years, we're going to have just part of the investment community that feels uncomfortable talking about female health. I would really love for them to get over themselves a bit.
You're kind of like a pioneer, so you're kind of leading the charge in this, really.
No, I don't know. I wouldn't say that. There's a lot of amazing female founders that have paved the way before me, like Daye from Outdoor Voices, and Sofia Moroso from Nasty Gal, and Boss. So there's I don't want to describe myself in that way, but what I have noticed is that the standards for female founders are a million times higher than the standards for male founders. And if you are direct, and it's in my nature to be direct, it's in the way that I was raised from Eastern Europe, and just in my family, we were always very truthful, which is definitely not the modus operandi in the UK in particular. And I get categorized as aggressive a lot. People would say, oh, she's very aggressive. And to me, that always really hurts when I hear that, because why, if a woman is direct and she knows what she wants, and she's contrarian and sticks to her opinion, why does that make her aggressive? Aggressive has such a negative connotation.
Yeah, so you're dealing with a lot, trying to change people's perspective and ideas about who you are and the business that you're building as well. Is there anything else that you would like to kind of leave our audience with in terms of either growing a business or in terms of sustainability?
Yeah, I think when it comes to starting a business, I would say this mentality of what's the worst that can happen. When it comes to growing a business, just having the appreciation that the skills that got you to a position where you now have the privilege to scale a business are vastly different from the skills that you need in order to scale a business. And about sustainability, if you don't do it from the start, and if you're not fully 100% committed to it from the start, it just won't work. It will always be seen as an afterthought. So, for example, at Daye, we could have launched with just regular plastic film wrappers for our tampons. That's what every other tampon company does. And it would have meant that we could have launched our product 3 months earlier. We would have had sales 3 months earlier, etc. But we decided that we were going to work with this really small supplier in Ireland who helped us create our home compostable wrappers, which would mean that we wouldn't be contributing towards the problem of microplastic waste. And that was a really difficult decision to justify to our board. It was a really difficult decision to justify to our consumers who were pushing for us to launch the product. But it set the precedent of, okay, sustainability comes first, and it comes before every other decision that we make for the business. And it also is built into the foundations of Daye. So now, we were able to grow with the supplier, and they have significantly smaller lead times than the 3 months that they had before. So yeah, I just think with sustainability, it has to be built into the foundations of your business. Otherwise, it's obvious it's an afterthought.
Well, I wanted to say thank you very much for joining us today, Valentina. Where can we find more about Daye and Vitals?
No, thank you, and thank you for giving Female Health a platform, and thank you for feeling comfortable to talk about tampons and menstruation. I do really appreciate that. Otherwise, you can learn more about Daye on our website, which is yourdaye.com. Daye is spelled Daye. And our Instagram handle is meetdaye.
Well, thank you very much. And it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Really nice to speak to you as well.
You've been listening to the Business of Universal Kindness podcast with me, Sarah Henson. If you enjoyed the show, then please subscribe and leave a review so that more people can find it and join us on this journey. Find the show notes and more episodes of this podcast at sarahhenson.co.uk/podcast. Music is by Studios On It from Audio Jungle.